Okay. Good morning. Thank you, early birds and night owls, for joining at this hour. This talk will be about music and more specifically about the theoretical scaffolding part that you might not know about, the harmonic structure of songs. And this is where we really get in the head of the composers rather than the performers. On the menu there, I'm going to give you a quick origin story of how I got there. Then, while we're at the top of our focus, we'll build some of the vocabulary we need to explain the said rules before getting into them. And to make this more concrete, we're going to analyze a few songs and see how the said rules can be broken. So feel free to jump in at any time, open your mic and interrupt me if you need any clarification. I'll try to keep an eye on the chat also if you want to put it there. Great. Quick disclaimer. Please take what I say here with a grain of salt. There's not really such a thing as infringing the divine laws of music. In this field, there are enough laws and rules and books that you can justify almost anything. What I'm really going to talk about is what makes the song feel special and how you don't notice it but enjoy it anyway. I hope that will change your perspective on your favorite bits of music, as it did for me. So let's get going. This story starts about 20 some years ago when I was younger and less proportional. I got into punk rock and heavy metal. And while there was no musician in my family and I had no education on the matter, I was really just looking for more reason to wear black t-shirts and finding new avenue to impress girls. And at the time, learning song was a bit long. Like, it was done through these kind of tablature, they're called. These charts where you have lines representing strings on the guitar and then numbers saying where you should put your fingers on the string. Really useful when you don't know music, when you don't care about learning notes. And then in the early days of YouTube, I found this guy. I'm gonna play a bit of his song. If it's too loud, let me know.
No, it's all good.
All right. So this man there is named Jason Becker, and I was really starstruck when I saw this because he's playing so fast. This is so epic. I really wanted to like shred my guitar like this guy. So I got into heavy metal bands with that classical vibe, and now I had to start learning scales. And this was a tedious process because I knew nothing about music, and I had to translate the scales from scores through these kind of charts and then put them into tablatures, double checking every sharps and flats. And it was a really tiresome process. But at some point, I saw a pattern emerge. I don't know if you see my mouse there, but my cursor on the screen. But if
Yeah,
you
we
look,
see it.
perfect. If you look at these numbers over there, you can notice that the intervals between the numbers are the same. And this really felt good for the future programmer that I was, to have a zero-based offset series of common patterns. That was perfect. So from that point on, I could learn scales and chords and arpeggios on the guitar just by their shape and these kind of intervals. So yeah, that's it. And fast forward a few years, then I was in this good but terrible heavy metal band where I met a bunch of actually educated musicians. And this generous looking one here gave me the first book he got walking into university, which is titled Writing and Analysis, Volume 1. And in that gripping document about music theory, I really stumbled upon this mystic-looking, very tattoo-worthy diagram there. And this is where my journey about learning harmony began, as yours now does. So welcome to your first lesson of harmony. This is really like a music analysis or music composition 101. It is going to be a ridiculously fast introduction to the basic building blocks of music.
Uh,
So yeah,
Vincent, may I
yeah,
interrupt you?
sure,
Going back to the picture, can you maybe is this going to be explained later on what we see in this picture? I mean,
of
uh,
course, of course it is.
perfect.
Great, but we need to learn a few words before getting to that. So this is where we're going. First thing, let's start with the atom of music, the note. I have to state that this thing, yes, it's a circle arrow. This thing, notes in themselves are not really interesting. Like, it's really how they stand next to their little friends. Because you have notes that exist within octaves. If I bring my piano, an octave would be that, like the space between, let's say, a C and the next higher C on the piano. And you can see like these, this is all about frequencies in math. So if you take the first audible C, which is at 16.35 hertz, and you double that, you get the next octave, the next C at 32.70. Exactly double, like this super complex formula here evokes. And then this octave is divided into 12 semitones, and they're rising in this like slowly rising exponential fashion. And this was decided and determined by our following concept, which is scales. And it's there that appears the fundamental mathematical or physical concept on which is built most of the music we know. It's about harmonics. So let's say we start with this with the C at the center of our harmonic exploration. We call that note the root. This is like the main anchor of our music. So listening at the harmonics between 1 and 2 of this note, this frequency, it quickly became obvious that some frequencies were better, like some of these harmonic ratios there had more pleasant sounds. And that's because they were coherent with this basic root C note. And the most important of them is the one with the simplest harmonic there, that 1.5, which is the G there, which is the fifth note of the scale. And if you would repeat that process of exploring these harmonics of every note one by one, you would eventually highlight only 12 notes, like mainly 12 frequencies with all their octaves there. And these are the 12 notes we know. I just put 7 of them there because it's for the context of the scale of C, but these space in between these notes there, they do exist and they're really important. Just know that if you do this process for all these notes there, you will eventually highlight these 12 notes there. And there's this hysterical image trying to convey what I just said in images. So there if you are able to get anything from that image, like harmonics, this is about how they land. This is how notes were decided, basically. This brings us to our next building block of harmony, which is a triad. And even if it sounds like 3 of something, it's really about 2 notes. So a triad is basically a group of 2 notes on a scale separated by one note apart. And you have only 2 types of triads. You have the major triad that are 4 semitone wide, like 1, 2, 3, 4, that are generally identified by being more joyful and open than their little brother, the minor triad, which is more melancholic or more closed. So these are the building blocks we have. We have notes aligned on a scale that you can group up by 2 so they can be happy or sad. Next thing then is a chord, which is, yes, multiple notes, but conceptually it's really about having triads stacked together. So if you put major and minor triads in these different permutations, you get chords with different qualities. So a major and minor one gives you a major chord, which is happy. You could have the minor and major triad, then that gives you a sad chord. The diminished chord, which is really dark and spooky in a sense, and this augmented one that nobody uses. It's just weird and it's super rare, at least in most of the music you probably have heard. Sorry for your grandma. And then if you stack more than 2 triads, you can start having more complex and busier chords that are like more elaborated, more fun in a sense. And you see that a lot in all the music, and I would even say that's mandatory in jazz. even to have like these amounts of notes. You build up a lot of triads and create a more flavorful harmonic landscape with that. And this is a huge Pandora box. We could talk about chords forever, about like how the chord is like. If you take these 2 octaves of C, you can realize that this is also a C, and this is also a C, and this is so the order in which you put your notes have a huge impact on how you heard them and feel them and how they are vertically aligned on the staff and everything. This is a huge topic. And then there's a super important relationship between chords and scales, because knowing that you have only these 7 notes in a scale, you can't have all chords, obviously. So chords dictate the nature of the chords. Scales dictate, sorry, the nature of the chords in there. So in the scale of C, you have C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, and B diminished. So these are the chords that occur in there. You have 3 major 1, 3 minor 1, and a diminished 1. And this is true for all scales. Like, this is magical. Not just for the C scale, the major C scale, like for the major A flat scale, that would be the same intervals. If you get this kind of repeating interval pattern and offset it left or right and change your root note, you will always get a major scale, whatever the note is. And this notion of similar interval giving you similar vibes has a name. That can be function. And this is the final block of this vocabulary session. Then we move on to a funnier part. So functions of a scale. This is the last one. This is the most important, I believe. Focus up just one last second. This is a way to talk about the relationship between chords in a scale and the root of that said scale. So let that sink in for a second. These Roman numerals here, that are the said functions, evoke the various harmonic states possible in a key. So if I tell you, oh, this song's pattern is 1-4-5, let's say this one. Well, I mean taking the first chord, the fourth, and the fifth, and then you would have something like. So this gives you this kind of harmonic scaffold of the song, and if you would play these same interval in any other key, you would just get the same song, but at different height. So same 1-4-5 thing, same song. It's really about respecting these intervals and ratios and creating these same tensions between the notes. And then there was one last super interesting part about this system of Roman numerals and function, is that you can use that to identify transgressions of your scale. So up there, you have this major scale with major 1, minor 2nd, minor 3rd, blah, blah, blah. But if you'd have like this uppercase value there, that's for a major chord, but you can have a lowercase to represent this minor version of this same chord. And then you can use flats or sharps to identify offsets against that. So that's really useful when you're looking to a song, you know, oh, this feels like being really in a C root basis, but then you hear this weird chord. Well, that's a flat major third that you can functionally identify with this flat 3 uppercase there. So that's it. That's it for the theory at that point. So quick recap. We have notes that are 12 divisions of octaves, scales that are these 7 notes pleasantly aligned on the harmonics of a root. Triads are happy or sad groups of 2 of these notes. Chords are stacked triads, and functions then are abstract representations of chords on a scale. I hope that's okay. I think the tough part is over. So we can now.
Yeah,
now that
it's a lot to take in.
Yeah,
but this is amazing.
No, that's a great thing about. That's the fun thing about music. And now that we can talk about harmonic function, it really allows us to analyze music without knowing notes, key, scales, and these things. You can just think with these fundamental blocks. So let's put our movie music composer hat and figure out how to build a great piece of music. Rules are super simple. First, you paint a scene, a musical scene that you call home. You establish a tonality by making clear that you're in that specific scale, and that by using its notes, and this become like the emotional anchor of the listener. This is the one function that we mentioned earlier. And from that point on, your goal is to build up what we refer to as tension. Not in the sense that you want to stress the listener, but rather that you're stretching your sound away from home and just telling some kind of story. And when stretching that musical elastic, staying within these scales notes allow you to remain stable and explore clearly the scales function. Like a very simple path is the 1-4-5. That's really common in all music. I like this example a lot because it's the clearest you can have. There. So we really had a really simple path over here, but if we want to go to other chords and live differently, as long as you stay on these white notes there on the keyboard, it will feel coherent because you stay within your scale note. And you have many other common patterns such as a 2-5-1. That sound pretty simple here, but that's kind of the fundamental block of most of the jazz songs, you know. So you can really simplify heavily this music by looking at it this way. And also we have to notice here that you have all these arrows converging on this 5 function there. And this one is probably the most important of them all. If you look at this diagram we used earlier, it's kind of the middle point there. Like this spot where all the circles seems to converge harmonically is this 5 function. It has a lot of gravity within the scale of C. And it's so important it was given its own very tragic name of dominant chord. And maybe I can try to quickly identify that. So if we're living in this realm of C, whenever we get to this 5 chord, it kind of begs you to go back to this comfortable root that we have. And then you have all this gravity that brings you back to... This is the 5 chord. This is the dominant one. So, and then that's it. The last point of the last rule basically is to resolve the tension, to go back from all what you've created and create some relaxation. But if all the composers were doing something as simple as that, we would probably have much less music than we have today. And that's because some of them break the rules and bend them by stretching tension beyond the established scale. And I'm going to dive deeper into this. And this is where the fun starts. And this is where we start looking at more music. So let's start by this very classic bit, this masterpiece. Let's listen to it to set the tone. We've all heard that. And as you see there in the highlighted function there, thanks. It's mainly 1/4s along the song and ends up on a 5. Like this is as standard as you can get. But there's an imposter in this case, which is this major 2 chord there. So remember, in C we have all these white notes. Then we see this one, jingle bell, jingle bell, jingle bell, all the way, blah, blah, blah. But then at some point, you have this. You have a F sharp that just jumps in. And if you listen to the C scale and add this, you know that it doesn't seem to belong in there. But over here, in the song. It's even hard to notice when you listen to it. Let's have it go once again. When you get to this in a one horse area, it's oh no, not this. Sorry. Oh wow, what's happening there? I just lost everything I had. Let me get back to this. Okay, so there, it was super hard to notice, and it blends so well because it's happening kind of behind the voice melody and the percussion, the scary fat man in the red suit. But when you pay close attention and you listen again to this on your own, on your side, this is the part of the chorus where there is the most harmonic tension here with this major second chord. And what's really great about this major 2 is that it's a cousin of our 5 chord there, and that's what's called a secondary dominant. And in this case it's referred to as a 5 of 5 because it's the 5th chord. Okay, it's the 5th chord of the scale that would be based on the 5th note of our root. So if this circle here is our C major key, and then we take this 5 note, this G, and make it the root of another scale, then the 5 chord of that other scale would be this D major. And this is one of the fundamental trick in the box, and it allows to create a lot of tension. And let me just really highlight that with this bit of music from the Avatar movie. Let's hear it. All right, so in this bit you have 6/5 major 2 and then back to the 6. So if you take these notes on a piano again, remember here all the black notes are generally forbidden. So you see someone and then you get this note. So here we're using this notion of secondary dominant, this 5th chord of the 5th chord, to stretch this elastic, this musical elastic, even further in the direction of our scale's dominant, to create this kind of uplifting moment. This is the chord that brings you somewhere else, and then big relaxation to a chord of our own scale. It would have a different impact if you do it in the downward direction. But still, it brings you somewhere else. And going upward, it's super uplifting. Major trick in the box, 5 of 5. It breaks the balance of this initial tonality we have and brings us somewhere else. Now let's move on to this 2003 top of the chart song from Britney Spears. Let's hear this small bit I want to talk about because we won't hear the whole thing. There. So first thing I have to say that here we have a minor 1 and a flat major 3rd. This is fine because that's a minor key. Just understand that these chords are allowed in this context. But this piece of music here has a little respect for scales and key, among other things. So what's happening here is that we are creating this tension point. So we have our minor 1, and then that's a major 3, I think. Okay, so this is our tension point. We start there, we go there, and then we just step down note, really semitone by semitone, rather than going through our allowed chords. So we're really just taking some point, and we move in the direction of our root. Using what we call passing notes or passing chords. Just go there, taking a shortcut through the woods, ignoring the roads, and going back there. So this is not a way to to create these kind of weird moments, and this is probably part of the success of this song. Let's just play it again, see if you hear it. So there's this weird bit that happens there when at the end of the line that creates this. Most of these chords wouldn't fit if you would hear them individually. I've got this and then I go to... It doesn't feel like the song is going anywhere, but the fact that it's used to bring you back to this initial one is what makes it work.
Is Vincent, is this the first time it was used like this? Is this the first song, or was there other examples of that?
Of this specific progression, you mean?
Yes, yeah.
That's a super good question because there's so much music out there, but I think this is not something I've heard in other pop songs, and this really made it stand out. Like the rest of this song is super, 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 super simple, and you basically just move on these main chords. But when you get to the chorus, you get this thing there. But most pop songs are using simple chord progression, like 1/4, 6/5. But the melody of the voice and the textures and the drums makes all the difference. Harmonically, there's a lot of commonalities in the pop music and the rock music. But this one is there because it specifically stood out and it was on the top of the charts for such a long time. Maybe not just because of the music, like the video clip was quite something, but that's an ingredient of its success, I believe.
It's been a long time since I've done analysis, but it could be, I think, perceived as a 2-5-1, the end, with the substitution of a diminished fifth. I think, but it's been a while.
Yeah,
So,
no.
Are you getting into substitutions at some point? Just that's the main question, and I want
No,
to show up, of course.
I won't because I didn't want this talk to last forever.
Okay.
But yes, you could see. I think the flat 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 third is a 5/5 also. So you can always find ways to justify this. There's probably a better way to see this, but the way when I look at this song, I really just see this chord and down a semitone, down a semitone, down a semitone. That gives you this pull.
It also happens to slide very well, like you said. It's just in this analysis thing, it becomes a nerd challenge to find. It's like wine tasting, I think.
Absolutely.
Find the right justification for what you experience. So just keep going. So
good point.
I would suggest Vincent needs to open up Music Academy for Unity, so Munity maybe as a shortcut. And yeah, so then we can learn more about all of this stuff.
It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of things to learn there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I never heard about any of that, so it's amazing to see that, and I definitely will have to rewatch and try it out as well.
Yeah, and there's more. I think I still got 2 bits of music to look at, and then I'll leave you alone with this. This super classical thing that you probably know, but just to refresh your ears. So you might know this guy, Beethoven. I think he's quite popular. So while this is an impressive display of virtuosity, in terms of harmony, we're really sticking to basics in the sense, and that's good for a reason I'll explain later. So we have 1, we have 4, we have 5s, but what makes this piece of music so interesting is that it jumps between major and minor scales revolving around the same root. And this is what keeps us on the edge. the fact that we're never clearly stable on are we in the major mode or minor mode, and that's why it's orange in there and not just yellow or green, red or green, like in the previous scales. So what, and that's, I think that's common in classical music, that you have these harmonic themes that are exposed and then revisited in minor mode, or that you have this kind of push-pull between being minor, being major, and really using that to convey emotion. And what I really want to show here is that it's okay to steal chords between major and minor version of your root. And I think there's one of my favorite chord progressions there, that you go to 1, 4, and then minor 4. Just flows naturally, but it's still cheating in a sense, because we're leaving the original scale we're in. And to kind of wrap it up, I'll go with this whole new world bit that brings a lot of these various techniques mentioned earlier. So Alan Menken here does something that's frequent in Disney music. So you have here something that's annotated as a diminished flat 6. Dominic might not agree, but we can discuss about this. What's happening here really is that
it's going straight in your 360.
Yeah.
Fight. Okay, sorry.
So what's going on there? You have this 4, 5, and then it's always this small incremental upward movement. It creates a surprising amount of instability there, because this doesn't feel like a C note. But if you go to this 4, 5, just this note goes up, and then push the whole chord to complete toward this 6. It creates big instability, as I mentioned, but it's resolved immediately by going to this right, delightful minor chord. And when you go to the last line of the chorus there, again, functions can be interpreted differently, but you have this super interesting movement created by using a secondary dominant and borrowing a chord to prepare this kind of 5-1 resolution there. And I'm going to play the bit because I haven't done that yet. So it flows super naturally, and it's gorgeous what's happening over there. You have this minor 6, then you go to this 5 of 5, borrowed minor chord, go back to 5. So it sounds super great, but it's kind of breaking this C scale rule that's over there. And that's just magical. So just once again. That was really poor piano, but you get it. This is beautiful. And we're kind of done with that. So what does this all mean, and what does that teach us about music? And
I know.
Yeah,
It's break the rules.
Kind of. It is. It tells us really that we don't know, and that past a certain point, we shouldn't care about these rules if music makes us feel good. Because music is not something that we invented. Like, it's merely a pleasant physics phenomenon that we're merely trying to understand and control, and it's so complex and refined that whatever rules people try to make to explain it, like, there will never be a holistic solution. So these rules are meant to be broken. Like with painting or cooking or architecture, language, game development, or any forms of expression. And that is simply beautiful. So thank you very much for hearing my 2 cents on music.